My name is Hagop Jack Bouroudjian. Everybody, of course, calls me Jack. Jack is something that I actually made up in college, only because they had a hard time pronouncing Hagop back then. And I am the chairman of Bouroudjian Partners. I'm also the chief investment officer for Index Futures Group. I've been a derivatives trader for my entire life and have just founded a new exchange called the Universal Compute Exchange, where we are trading the cloud. The exchange is like an ecosystem when you think about it. And more than likely, what people don't understand and what people need to understand is that it's a community. It's a community of people that get together. That community is really changing. This revolution that's taking place. It's more of an evolutionary process, I should say, that's taking place in the markets, where what was a physical edge, and I'll explain what an edge is in a second, is really turning into a technological edge. So what was a question of where you stood in the actual trading pit physically has now really gone into what kind of an algorithm that you might have, or are you faster than the next guy getting in and out of the trade? And that's really the nature of the marketplace and how it's really morphing as we talk. Remember, a lot of these changes started taking place early on in the 80s and 90s when we started to first take trades and put them on a screen. And we had what we called hybrid markets back then, and we still do to a certain degree. But back then what we saw was an evolution taking place where people really wanted to take control over their trading. And really, remember, it all has to do with the fact that you've got this, this technological revolution taking place with the internet, where information is now at everybody's fingertips. So everybody now feels as if they have the power to be able to trade. Well, when you give them that power, especially through an electronic trading platform, well, that opens up the world to the trading world. And really what we're seeing is that world, which is getting bigger and bigger, had really started back in the 80s and 90s. Now, where it's going, well, it's really going into, a morphing of markets and technology. As I said earlier, it's now a question of the algorithm that you have. It's a question of, what kind of speed you might have getting in and out of the transaction itself. It's a question of having the right knowledge. And, all of these things are really factors that are changing the way the markets have been treated and the way the markets are viewed upon. Well, Mary, I got to tell you, being a trader is got a lot of benefits. In fact, I always said the life of a money-making trader is a blessed life indeed, because you basically can go out there and make your own hours. If you're a good local, and a local is basically somebody who's trading for their own account, you could leave after a half an hour of trading if you've made enough money. What I really miss most about the trading environment and the floor itself is the camaraderie. There was a lot of camaraderie, and everybody had neighborhoods. Chicago is a city made of neighborhoods, which is different than a lot of other cities. And we each had our own little neighborhood. So there was the Italian neighborhood, there was the Armenian neighborhood, where we would get there and we would only speak Armenian with one another, and everybody would know what's happening, and we would exchange information. Ovga Kenegod, Ovga Zachegod, all right? And these were things that we would share with just ourselves. And I used to love that. That's one of the things that I miss, because it was really a community. Now, the pranks that we played on one another were obvious. I mean, whether it's just starting to yell at somebody and calling them a name and everybody chanting that, or one of the things that we used to love doing is sticking a shark fin made of paper, which were these little cards that we used to have, and we used to stick it unknowingly on somebody's back, and then everybody would start yelling shark, 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 and it was things like that we used to haze the newcomers into the marketplace with. Well, the CME and the Board of Trade were always very ethnic, and that's something that people don't understand. Now they're together, but there was a time when I first got into the markets where the CME was known as the Jewish Exchange and the Board of Trade was known as the Irish Exchange. And there was a time where the Irish weren't allowed in one exchange and the Jewish weren't allowed in the other exchange. That has, of course, all since changed quite a bit. But, it's really interesting to see how those cultures really morphed over time. So you ended up with your perishable commodities trading at one exchange, and then the non-perishables trading at the other. But what happened is, of course, money is green, and as we've seen times change, we've seen the morphing of the two exchanges, and together they make, of course, 90% of the futures markets, and they are a global powerhouse.